Kensington Palace is under pressure to release the original photograph of the Princess of Wales with her 3 children. The photograph, that was allegedly taken by Prince William, was supposed to quell concerns the public shared about her well-being. But after global news agencies issued a rare takedown order of the image because it was clearly manipulated, it did the opposite, fueling wild conspiracies about the royal family. So much so, the palace has gone into damage control and the Princess of Wales has apologised and claimed responsibility for the editing, saying, like many amateur photographers, I do occasionally experiment with editing. I wanted to express my apologies for any confusion the family photograph we shared caused. Now that message is a bizarre one and the public isn't buying it. Princess Catherine is not to blame here. She's still recovering from abdominal surgery and people right around the world are continuing to send their love, support and well wishes to the Princess of Wales, hoping she can recover quickly. It's how the palace let this photograph go out in the first place.
But I think the palace has a lot to answer for. I mean, Kate is just recuperating for her abdominal surgery. She's been in hospital recently, still recuperating at home. But why nobody at the palace thought to have a closer eye on this image? It has been seen tens, if not hundreds of millions of times around the world. And it's a litany of errors here. It's been hastily put together by a woman who isn't back at work. She's trying to put a nice photo out of her kids, but it's unfortunately backfired spectacularly tonight.
For the royal family, this has become a PR nightmare and public trust has been damaged. It's not something to be dismissed, as Brits whose taxes pay for the royals deserve transparency. The Deputy News Director of AFP explains just how badly the photograph was manipulated.
This was done a bit fast by all of us, all the agencies, just by pure habit and total trust with the material that Kensington Palace is usually sending out. The more you look at the picture, the more you enlarge it, it becomes obvious that it's been manipulated or altered or doctored or whatever you call it, and really badly so, in a way that is really amateur.
The question is, how much damage has been done and how can trust be rebuilt?
We live in a post-truth world, but the royals had been largely free from all of that. Can we believe them now, whenever something is released?
Well, that's a big question, isn't it? I mean, it's based on trust and relationships. You know as well as I do, the people you deal with every day, and for us as journalists dealing with the palace, and for the people out there who are interested in the royal family, trust is everything. And once you scratch the surface of it all, and it all falls down like a pack of cards, I think they've got a big issue on their hands with this image and this issue at large.
British historian and writer Tessa Dunlop has told Sky News the palace has well and truly lost control of the narrative and their integrity is in question.
Certainly something's awry. I wonder if it wasn't this is pure speculation on my part, but I believe it was something quite serious. Otherwise, why wouldn't the palace have just put out into the public domain the original undoctored photograph and said, look, I thought I could improve it with a little bit of airbrushing here and there, but here's the original. They didn't do that, and in not doing that, they further stoked or fueled the fires of conspiracy and cynicism. And it makes me think, we know she's post-operative, we know she's been unwell, had a major health blow, and therefore perhaps maybe wanted to use an old photo where she looked a bit more rosy and what she thinks is more her normal self. That's speculation on my part. Either way, by trying to control the narrative, they've lost control of the news agenda entirely. And it's interesting, Laura, and she referred to this today in her apology tweet, where she refers to herself as an amateur photographer. Why? Why did Kate's main hobby become photography? Well, again, it was another way of the royal family trying to exert some control. You can have pictures of my children if I take them. Of course, now she is the subject of all this media interest. Who takes the photo? I mean, if you look at that shot, and my first reaction when I saw it yesterday was, wow, not only is William a future king, but he's also an incredible photographer. I mean, it did look too good to be true. If you've got children, to get everyone saying cheese and looking delightful and framed beautifully, very, very hard if you're busy Prince Dad. Unlikely.
I'm spot on, Tessa. And do you really believe that she'd just been, noodling around with a Photoshop application on her laptop in that beautiful garden? I mean, I'd believe her if she said she used an Instagram filter, but this is much more than that.
It is, which is why the photographer was killed. I mean, we do know that previously she's done a bit of slightly dodgy or awkward photoshopping. You remember Louis turned up in a Christmas photograph minus a finger and such like. So that isn't inconceivable. But what is weird is that to quash the speculation, they haven't just released the original photograph. And that does beg additional questions, which is why I'm wondering if in a totally understandable way, she thought, actually, you know, I don't want to look post-operative. I want to look back to my normal self. And therefore there was a bit of sleight of hand there. And the problem is now by the doubling down that we've had from the palace and really the extraordinary, clumsy narrative that they've been leading, because lest we forget, Kate's on sick leave. Quite why she was the one that had to take the flak for this photograph that she didn't snap anyway. I mean, it's in William's name. I don't really understand. My hunch was maybe the palace's thinking was they'll come less hard down on Kate, therefore she should front up and own it, as opposed to William or the suits, those notorious suits that Harry always went on about. But either way, they've lost control of the narrative, and they've also, as you mentioned, alluded to, they've lost public trust. And the whole point of the royal family, certainly here in Britain, or one of the points, beyond this ridiculous fairy tale soap opera, is that they are meant to be above grubby politics, and we've certainly had a lot of grubby politics here in Britain over the last few years. And what the late Queen embodied so brilliantly and singularly was this idea of something being exemplary and above the fray. And by chipping away at our trust, because you'll remember there were questions, cash for questions, and dodgy stuff around the king, and then there's Andrew and all his sagas. But Kate and William always seemed fresh of face, thoroughly decent, very honest. And now there is this big question mark over their integrity, which is deeply unfortunate. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the internet has been serving up some pretty hilarious takes on all of this. I saw one that, said, Prince Andrew now claiming it was Kate who photoshopped that photo of him, in that Caribbean island. But more seriously, I mean, if we take ourselves back a couple of weeks ago, and this is a good example for an Australian audience here, there was a photo of Kate and her mum off to a doctor's appointment. I think she was coming out of Adelaide Cottage. And then the British press, as I understand it, didn't widely publish that photo at all because there's this understanding between the British press and the royal family. That was not an officially released photo, and the British press respected that. Now they've released this doctored photo. Is that, a chord shattered, do you think? Well, there is this very curious, on the one hand, super deferential behaviour around the royal family, because it's all about access, and the royal press pack attached to each press organisation and tabloid wants the best access, at the same time as they will also attack when they feel let down. Like today, the press are on the attack. They're like, we respected you, we gave you space, and now you've taken us for fools. And that's what it feels like. There's a great dollop of entitlement about the way that Kate and William and their advisors, bear in mind they have a legion of employees paid for by out of the public purse, out of the sovereign grant. This idea that they could just take us for fools, that they could pull the wool over our eyes. But I think beyond this media frenzy, Laura, which will run on, it's like a wave motion, you know how it works. Something else will pop up, we'll briefly forget. But actually, there is a greater existential crisis for the royal family going on right now. That fault line, when the baton shifts from one monarch to another, is always a weak point. Doesn't matter what century you look at, that is always a danger point. We knew there would be problems moving from the incredibly impressive, hugely popular late Queen to Charles, but I don't think we expected the chickens to come home so quickly. We've got a king with an unnamed cancer. We've got the lightning rod, the glamour, the grace and the beauty of the future royal family, i.e. Kate Middleton, because that's all we've got now, out of action with an unnamed illness, shying away. She was caught briefly in the car today, turning her face away from the press. And this woman who seemingly lent into being a royal, who actively chose it because she chose to marry William. She'd been in Britain, she'd been in the boarding school system, she knew what it involved, and she seemed to be leading really quite brilliantly and taking over, this new guard. Now it appears that she's taken a bit of time off. she's feeling vulnerable, and a bit like workers who never returned from COVID. Maybe, who knows, and this is again speculation on my part, is she sitting there thinking, what was I doing glad handing on that crazy roundabout? A sense that perhaps she doesn't want the gig as much as she once did. And can you blame her, Laura?